In the Gagra mountain range in Georgia, on top of its steep limestone cliffs, almost hidden away lies the entrance to the deepest cave on Earth. But the surrounding area is also home to the second, third, and fourth deepest caves ever found. So there's certainly something about this specific area of Georgia that provides the perfect environment for deep caves to form. The deepest one of them all, however, is the Veryovkina cave. It has a known depth of around 2,223 meters, which really does make it an unbelievably deep cave. It was first discovered in the late 1960s by Russian climbers who managed to descend to 115 meters, but at this time they had no idea just how deep Veryovkina cave was. Exploration would continue in the 1980s by a different group of climbers from the Perova Speleo Club, and they would manage to reach a depth of 440 meters. This was thought to be the bottom for a very long time, but finally in 2015, cavers from the very same group would find a new shaft that would lead even deeper into the cave. The following year, in 2016, after some preparation, the exploration of this new shaft would take place, and a new depth of 630 meters would be reached. A few months later, another expedition would start, and this time they managed to get down to 1,010 meters. Expedition after expedition would soon follow, mapping out the entirety of the cave. Each expedition reaching deeper than the last, until an expedition in 2021 would make a horrific discovery. One that would put a complete stop to the exploration of the cave. On the cold but sunny day of August the 14th, a group of cavers would make the trip up the mountain to begin their descent into the Veryovkina cave. But as they reached the entrance, they noticed a rope hanging down into the cave, as if someone was already inside. This was very concerning given the difficulty of the cave, and not only that, but you need a permit to even climb here, a permit which only a handful of people would have had. As they descended, they also started to notice all the bits of gear that was just randomly lying around. The more gear they saw, the more worried they became that someone might be stuck inside the cave. They made it their priority to get down there to see if someone needed help, but they were instead met with a grim sight. Suspended in mid-air, still attached to the ropes, was the body of a man, but it was clear he was dead, and so badly decomposed that it was obvious he had been here for a long time. To begin with, the police really struggled to identify the man, but in the end, due to a missing person report, the body would be identified as 37-year-old Sergei Kozeev. But what was he doing here, in the world's deepest and possibly hardest cave in the world? How did he end up in such a remote place, all alone? Well, for Sergei, it would all start on the 1st of November 2020, when he said goodbye to his wife and 2 children as he set off for another one of his solo adventures. Sergei was a well-seasoned outdoorsman and would regularly take mountaineering and hiking trips. He also took part in a variety of different sports and even ran marathons, so physically he was certainly in the prime of his life. But Sergei had grew tired of the same hiking trails and mountains that he had seen so many times before, and instead he had his mind set on traversing through the Veryovkina cave, alone. Sergei had been planning this for many months, and he thought he had everything planned down to the last detail. But Sergei had only been caving just a few times before, and now he was about to head off into the deepest cave on Earth. His inexperience meant that all the planning in the world would probably have made very little difference. Veryovkina cave is so deep and hard to traverse that it cannot be done in a single day. You'd actually have to stay in camp deep inside the cave and then carry on the next day. The cave has 5 camps in total, dotted along the way down. Sergei knew this at least, and he had brought plenty of food like pasta that he would cook inside the cave. In fact, Sergei actually kept his tent at the first camp, Camp 600, for almost a week before deciding to move on. But he wouldn't just be sat there in the dark, he would have been exploring the many crevices and passages that the cave had to offer. But on the 6th day, Sergei wanted to go deeper to more challenging parts, and this is where things would go horribly wrong. During his descent, at around 1,000 meters, he became stuck. For whatever reason, he was completely unable to move himself any further up or down. He tried again and again to move himself, but every attempt only drained his energy. And at this depth of the cave, it gets a lot more wet and a lot more cold. He had the necessary gear to keep warm at camp, but getting stuck like this was not something Sergei had planned for. His thin fabric clothing was useless against the dripping water, and the cold was getting worse. And so Sergei would hang there, 1,000 meters deep inside a dark cave, completely alone and utterly helpless. Until eventually, the freezing temperatures would cause hypothermia and Sergei's body would begin to shut down. Although Sergei had a wife and children, he had not told them where he was going. He had not told anyone where he was going, so he really did vanish without a trace, until he was found in the cave 9 months later just by pure accident. Now usually this is where the sadness and the morbidness would end for most of these stories. But for Sergei, there was still one gruesome step that had to be taken. His wife demanded that his body be recovered from the cave, despite it being 1,000 meters deep. Authorities did agree, knowing that the body can't stay there. One reason is the gases it can release while decomposing can be extremely harmful and even deadly to other cavers, so the mission to get Sergei's body out of the cave was initiated. The task was going to be extremely difficult. The team of professional climbers that was assigned with the body recovery thought it would be impossible to get him out on a stretcher or even a body bag, due to the weight of the body and the tight constrictions in some parts of the cave. This is when a truly grim suggestion would be made: to cut Sergei's body into pieces and bring him up piece by piece. And that's exactly what they would do. On the 11th of August, 27 climbing professionals started their descent into the Veryovkina cave. It took more than 2 days for them to reach Sergei, and once they did, the gruesome task began. They cut his body up into 10 different pieces and placed each piece into a special heavy-duty bag. The next few days were spent lifting these bags out of the cave, which the team found to be a lot more challenging than they first thought. But on the 16th of August, 5 days later, the team emerged from the cave, carrying the 10 bags with Sergei's remains. His wife thanked all of the people involved in the recovery and would later put her husband to rest. Thank you so much for watching if you did make it to the end, and if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing as I'd love to reach 1k. But until the next true disaster, it's goodbye from me.